Hello everybody, welcome to yet another video session, The Academic Aspirant, hosted by the Column of QA. Today we have with us Manya Singh, who is an assistant professor at Law Center 1, Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. Before joining University of Delhi, she worked as an assistant professor with Symbiosis Law School, Noida. She is pursuing her PhD from Faculty of Law, Jamia Millia Islamia. She was also engaged as a researcher for a project on transparency audit of public institutions taken up by Indian Law Institute and instituted by the Central Information Commission, New Delhi, from January 2017 to July 2017. To her credit, she also has articles published in journals and books. She has also been publishing editorial articles in newspapers and online portals such as Live Law, The Better India, etc. My first question is, tell us about your journey from being a student of the first batch of School of Law, KIIT Deemed to be University, to being a research scholar for PhD at a premier institution like Jamia Millia Islamia.
Thank you, Colin of QA, for giving me this opportunity to share my experience, the little experiences that I have had till date today. Uh, the question that you have asked me, isn't it very nostalgic for me? I started preparing at a time when back then there was no concept of CLAT examination. So we had to download forms of each law school separately, and most of them did not even have the examination center in Assam, the place from where I belong. So that way, too many colleges did not actually exist in my list of selected colleges. Ultimately, after a huge round of discussions with my father, who actually played a very significant role in this decision of being, in the first batch of KIT Law School, Bhubaneswar. Of course, it was not that easy, and it was challenging. It was actually challenging from various aspects. When I actually entered into this law school, the certain things that I can now vouch for is that. I have been mentored by some of the finest professors in the country, and I'll surely take this opportunity today to mention them. Starting from Professor Faizan Mustafa, who is now the Vice Chancellor of Nalsar, Hyderabad. We were also taught by Dr. Yogesh Pratap Singh, who is now the Registrar of NLU Orissa. We were also taught by Dr. Bharat, who is now professor in Punjab University. We were also being taught by, Dr. Afroz Alam, who taught me political science and who is now the head of the Department of Political Science in Maulana Azad University in Hyderabad. We were also being taught by Dr. Bishwajit Chatterjee, who is now in the North Bengal University. And I think I will not be wrong if I say that that the management of KIT University and the founder of KIT University, that is Dr. A. Samanta, who is actually a very visionary man, and they took all these steps to bring in many renowned visiting faculties to the university, and many known faculties to the law professors to the university, so that so that there's a constant encouragement to the batch, to the whole batch, and we would be, they had done a lot many efforts were being taken by the management, by the founder in this particular aspect. So being and also being students of the first batch, we all have there were too many anxieties also, and to the cure of these anxieties was also the faculties who actually played the role, not only as teachers inside the classroom but also as mentors who were beyond the classroom. So they provided without any hesitation, whenever required, without any hesitation, they would indeed help us out with all the issues that we were facing. And this indeed played a very pivotal role in shaping everything, in shaping many things that I am today. And till date, even if and since I am in the academic field also, and till date, if there is anything that is required, anything that is necessary, I still stay in touch with them, so that I can solve my problems relating to any any subjects that I would have. And in this way, I would say that even though it has been a challenge, it has, in a way, it has been very beneficial, that I've been lucky in this way to be a part of the first batch of KIT Law School. And 5 years, that is in after 5 years, that is in 2012, when I completed my BLLB from KIT University, I was clear that I had to do an LLM. I wanted to do an LLM, and so immediately after my LLB, I started applying for my masters for LLM, and I had chosen that I would be doing my masters from India itself. So I started giving my CLAT exams for the national law schools, and also I prepared myself for the Indian Law Institute entrance exams. And on the basis of which I preferred, that, I would be studying. I preferred to stay in Delhi, and I decided that I'd join Indian Law Institute back then in 2012. Now, the preferring ILI was, had many reasons. One of them, of course, was basically I wanted to stay in Delhi, and then ILI being a premier institution, and I'd heard from many seniors and many others with whom I had a discussion. They all said that ILI would be a good choice. And once I entered into the Indian Law Institute, the whole aura got changed. The environment where you study is also something which is very, very important. So what I realized when I started studying in the Indian Law Institute is the first thing is the exposure that you get. The place where ILI is located, that is right in front of the Supreme Court, and you had the Law Commission of India in that particular same building. So all this had a very big impact. The whole environment from KIT University to the point of ILI was very, very different, and it was in fact very, very challenging too. So the research, coming to the point of the studies and the point of LLM in ILI, but the ILI LLM is completely based on the research experience that I had. I had a life-changing experience when I came to ILI. So why do I change that? Is the way that you were asked to research, the way that research was expected from you was at a completely different level, which means even during LLBs, we do get small projects, we do get projects, and we do have to present those projects in front of the faculty. But what is actual research and how do you research is something which I learned in ILI, and I'll be forever indebted to for that. Another opportunity that I got in when I was in ILI was during the last semester when you get to do your dissertation. My dissertation guide was Dr. Anurag Deep, and he was he was one person who encouraged me to do research on each and every point, each and every case, and he taught me actually how to research, how to basically understand the nuances of nuances of doing a particular research, how in every sentence and how in every situation he would guide me, and he would actually question me that how come, how have you mentioned about this, Sukanya, what do you think, don't you think this should have been the idea? So every point he kept on questioning me, which in a way helped me more and more to do my research on that particular topic that I had chosen. So this way, ultimately my dissertation was, I got a distinction in that particular dissertation paper, and I'm all indebted to the guide, that is Dr. Anurag Deep, that I had. And so as a whole, my journey in Indian Law Institute was, it was a very, very different experience, and I really learned a lot when I came to ILI. After this, once my LLM was done in 2014. So one thing that I have again forgotten to mention out here is back then in 2012, when I was doing my, when I started preparing for my LLM exams, we did not actually have the 1-year courses. The 1-year courses came later on in the year 2013. So 2012, when I entered into an LLM, it was basically a 2-year course that we had done. So 2014, when I had completed my master's, I joined the Symbiosis Law School as an assistant professor. I worked there for a time period of almost like 2 years, and like a little bit of more than 2 years. After this, I started preparing. By the end of 2016, I started preparing for my doctoral, for my PhD, and then again my preference was getting myself admitted in a college or in a university which would be situated in Delhi. So in November 2016, I got a chance to register myself as a PhD scholar, and this is how this is what is in short how I reached Jamia Millia as a PhD scholar.
There's a popular saying that do an LLM only if you want to join academics. How far do you support the statement? How do you think one should prepare oneself if they want to pursue academics in future? For an LLM, what are the criteria on which one should decide to do an LLM from Indian university or any other foreign university?
Now, when it is an LLM program, it is in India, we now have a 1-year course since 2013. And before 2013, the time when I was doing my LLM, it was a 2-year course in 2012. And I believe, for me personally, I believe that for a complete understanding, LLM is something which is very, very important, as it gives us a good grasp of the law that we've studied during LLB. And you have a proper understanding of what law is all about. But of course, it's a very personal choice that whether one wants to go for an LLM or whether one does not want to go for an LLM. Now, this particular query that whether LLM is something which is only required for academics. Now, if I try to analyze what is the work of an advocate, I understand that an advocate focuses on research. I also believe that a deep understanding of the provisions of the law is also extremely important as practitioners, as lawyers, which is equally important for an academician. So, you know uh, when you go for an LLM, it does not require any kind of a special kind of a special preparation. That's what I believe. What are they trying to test in an LLM entrance examination is nothing but the legal understanding of law that we arrive at, that we understand, that we've studied in a 5-year course or in a 3-year course. So in the 4th year or in the 5th year, you have an understanding of what you want to actually pursue ahead. And just as an extension of what we have studied in LLB, it is more in LLM, we just go deeper into what the provisions are about. We try to go more into the jurisprudence of a subject, and that is why I don't think it is only for academicians that an LLB is so much required. And something which is LLM is also can be something which can be done by practicing advocates, which can be done by anybody who has done an LLB for a deeper understanding of the law. And ultimately, it is an individual choice to do an LLM in India or in a foreign university. I'll just my opinion on this particular part of the question would be that there are few Indian universities which are on par with foreign universities as of today, as they already offer a wide range of specialization now. One of the university that I can recall is the South Asian University that is there situated in New Delhi. So 1-year LLM, from the time 1-year LLM has become a part of our curriculum, it has become very, very easy for us, even to for anybody to actually do an LLM, because it's the same curriculum followed now all over the world. And moreover, when we talk about traditional subjects like criminal law, for traditional subjects, my personal belief is, if you want to go for an LLM in criminal law, then I think it would always be better to choose an Indian university. But when it comes to going for subjects like ADR, going for subjects like international law, trade law, then maybe we can choose something which is a foreign university, which can be beneficial, because you try to compare so many different laws, you try to learn about so many things which maybe a foreign university will which might be a better place to study. But that's just my own personal opinion in this, in the question that you asked me.
If you can kindly address the issue, gender specific role and expectation in the field of law, especially with regards to teaching or professing.
I completely believe that this is a myth, because a myth to say that professing is a safer option for women. Because if you look into today's statistics, if you look into if you look into how many how many male teachers are there and how many female teachers are there, I think that's the first point where this particular statement can be proved wrong. Now, when you look into academics as a when we look into academics as a career, as teaching as a career, I don't think teaching is something which is very easier, and practicing law is something which is very difficult as a career. Because if we try to analyze in both the professions, if we do not have the acumen, if you do not have the rigor to work harder, I don't think it's easy to excel in both the in both teaching and as well as in practicing law. So in general, although it appears to many that teaching is easier than practicing, but in reality it is not so, because as a lawyer, we know that we cannot go to the court without preparing ourselves properly for the for the whole day in the court. You might have 5 cases and you need to prepare each and everything while going to the court. Similarly, as academicians or as teachers, we do not go to the classroom without preparations. Every teacher spends many hours before going to a particular classroom, and it is impossible that a teacher goes to the classroom without a proper understanding of that particular subject, without a proper understanding of the particular section that I'm going to teach, that he or she is going to teach. And it is something which is not something which is not at all easy, and you will have to be very regular in keeping up with your studies, because tomorrow when you go to the class, it will be like the whole chapter is completely different. So it's not easy that you go to the class without studying, and similarly you cannot go to the court as a lawyer without any practice. So for me, when they said that professing something which is teaching is a very safer option for women, it is something which is a myth, because it is not something which is very easy. It is not very easy to go to the classroom and teach without having a proper knowledge of that particular subject. And I treat both of them at par with each other when it comes to when it comes to, in reality, both of them needs a lot of hard work, both of them needs a lot of acumen, both of them needs a lot of confidence to be to actually go for a to go for something which is teaching in the class. And the part of the gender based part that you're talking about, I don't think I need to explain more, because I've already spoken that there's so many faculties, or so many male faculties in the teaching profession today, that I think it's very easy for me that I can call it as a myth today, that professing is something which is only a women centric role.
My next question to you is, you had been a student and later a faculty at both private institution and traditional university. How do you envisage the difference in teaching and research methodology in both these categories of institution? And what changes do you propose?
See, I have always believed that teaching is something which cannot be very static, because a teacher needs to a teacher somewhere or the other needs to enrich themselves each and every time when he or she goes to the classroom. So this requires an ample time which should be given to the faculty, so that he or she can prepare for that particular class. Now, in a private university, you see that there is an all-round growth of both the faculty and both the students, because so many opportunities, you have so many resources, that you have so many legal advancements that have taken place, so many technological advancements that have taken place. So what happens is that the point of academic interest is somewhere the percentage has to be divided amongst all the other opportunities that they have. So this way, what happens is, in a private university, you have many other opportunities also, because of which the academic interest somewhere or the other might get a bit sidelined. Now, in cases of traditional universities, all the advancements that I'm talking about, all the technological advancements that I'm talking about, it's not like it is not there in a traditional university, but it takes a bit of time. The pace is a bit on a slower side, and only when it has been properly accessed by the traditional university, the students can grab that particular opportunity. So these are little distinctions that I think I can mention when it comes to the difference between studying in a private university and studying in a traditional university, or maybe teach as a teacher or as a faculty in a private university, or as a faculty in a traditional university. So these are very little things that we can see as a distinction.
In the last question, just as you said, teaching is not very static in nature. You yourself have been teaching criminal law, labor law, and ADR together. How difficult was it for you to juggle between completely three different dimensions of law? Do you think teaching methodology differs with the change in subject?
Oh, that's an interesting question that you've asked. I've been teaching criminal law because it has been my specialization paper also, and moreover, I was always interested in teaching papers of human rights, because I've also specialized in human rights. So when labor law, I got an opportunity to teach labor law. I could not deny it, because somewhere or the other, I always wanted to know about more about labor rights, more about the concept of how industries, what are the rights given to the employers, what kind of rights are being given to in the unorganized sector. So such things had always been of interest, and that is why labor law was one of the subjects that I chose when I came to law faculty. And coming to something which is criminal law, because I had been teaching IPC, and I had loved that particular paper, and both labor law and both IPC have been very traditional papers. Now, when I got an opportunity to basically teach the alternative dispute resolution as a paper, I that which is of course a very new area, and you have so many things to explore. And the best part in teaching alternative dispute resolution was that since it is a clinical course in the law faculty, the students are really very interested in those classes, because they get to undergo those practical trainings. They would always be interested in doing those exercises. We give them a problem, they are made into they form themselves into various groups, and then they discuss amongst themselves, they mediate, they negotiate, such interesting things are, done in that particular course, because the practical trainings also carry marks. So, and you would see that in the training classes, or at least in the clinical classes, all the students, they are actually present, because everybody loves doing something which, end of the day or somewhere in the middle of the day, a teacher comes in and tries to give them some problem, and where he or she is not boringly teaching that particular subject in the classroom, like all the other, all the other subjects, every student gets interested. So even though all of them, all the three subjects has varied from one subject to the other, I feel this good mix of all these subjects has not only been a challenge to me, but also something which has been an opportunity for me to also personally grow. So this is one reason that, I have loved all the three subjects that I got to teach when I came to law faculty. And indeed, something which really interests me is like, because of all the new things that you get to learn from the students from this three areas, three very different areas that I've been teaching.
In today's legal studies, research is one of such integral part of every law school curriculum. But research is more than merely paraphrasing the existing literature on the internet or the books at hand. How do you perceive the quality of research amongst law students in India?
For this, I won't color all the law students today with the same color, because I believe in a particular classroom or in a particular school or in a college, there are completely different categories of students studying, and all of them have their own interest why they have studied law, and what has been the basis of, coming and choosing LLB programs. And but at least, when I was in my college days, I don't remember me being so interested in research. I'm talking about my LLB days, me being so interested in research and going to somebody and saying that, sir or ma'am, I really want to research on this particular paper and please help me through it. But interestingly, there has been a change that I have seen, in the last few years that I've started teaching. I see that there is at least, out of the 80% students that I've taught, maybe there are at least 10 to 20% of these students who are actually interested in research. So I see so many students coming up to me today and saying that, ma'am, I really want to interest on this paper. Will you help me out? Ma'am, I want to write something. Will you help me out on the topic? And I have realized personally that, researching is so important, and it is so important that, if a student is keenly interested, we need to actually guide them. And I have also seen students actually excelling while writing those papers. There's so many students who have written brilliant papers after that, after they get the proper guidance. So now the problem that arises is, why do we require a plagiarism test? It is because, we must remember that in a particular setup or in a particular university, what happens is, everybody is not so much interested in writing a paper or in researching. So the basic problem that takes place is, we have to, because of those other chunk of people who are not very interested in researching, and there grows the tendency to plagiarize, to rephrase, the point of rephrasing that you've mentioned. That's where that particular tendency grows, and we need to curb them down with the help of such plagiarism tools to achieve at least something which is the minimum quality in today's times. So we cannot do away with the plagiarism test, because it is something which is required to achieve the minimum quality in today's times. I'm not worried about those students who are interested in researching. It is only for those, students who are, because of the part of the course curriculum, they have to write papers, they have to submit papers, they have to write projects, and they have to, and because of that particular, because of this, compelled structure that we have, we need to have this plagiarism test to at least, find out, to at least achieve this minimum quality in today's times.
You have been an author and a researcher yourself. Your articles have been published in online blogs, newspaper columns, and various legal journals. From your personal experience, how do you envisage the difference in research methodology and writing for these three different platforms of publication?
See, I have always been interested in, I've been somebody who has been interested in writing short articles. So, because short articles, it's very easy to write. It's very easy to, when you pen down your thoughts, since a short article will only be almost like 2 pages or maximum 3 pages, it's very easy to pen down your thoughts at that particular point of time and end that article in maybe in a few hours also, if you have a good grasp on that particular subject. This is how I developed my interest in writing down short articles for, newspapers or for other online blogs that you have mentioned. And whenever I write on such newspapers, write on such issues, I'm mostly talking about the contemporary issues. So you will see that all my articles that I have published online on, for the newspapers and these other similar things, you would see that I have only based my thoughts on contemporary issues. Now it's very easy to write on something for which a discussion has been going on, and for which an article which appeals to the public at large. Those articles, which I publish in those blogs or in those in newspapers and all, are more focused on the public welfare or on an issue of something which is of public interest, and it is all based on my own personal thoughts. So when I think that I'm done with this particular article, I generally send it out, so that it gets accepted in a newspaper or in any online blog that I want this article to be published. So this is one part. This interest is completely a personal interest that I have, and it is something which is very very different from how a journal. How do you write an article in a journal? Now, writing an article in a journal is completely different again, and writing an article in a journal is completely on the backdrop of all the academic interest and all the there's something which is an academic requirement that we have, that we need to publish articles in the journal. And for publishing an article in the journal, the first point that will always be necessary is an in-depth understanding of the particular article. Without an understanding of of that topic, without going through number of books, without going through number of good articles written by jurists and of academicians, it is not possible that we write down a good article for a journal, because a journal accepts articles only when it is of a minimum like around 3,000 words to going to around 8,000 words. Certain kinds of criterias they do have, and you will have to fulfill all the criterias to get your article published in a journal. So whenever I've been writing for any articles to the journals, it is not for the general public at large, which I do so when I write an article for the newspaper, as I've mentioned. It is for we all know who is going to read and read a law journal. So it is very very important for us that I go through various readings. I do a very deep research, and many times an empirical research is also required, because I have to base my article on various evidences. And then again, we have so many limitations with so many criteria that it has to be published in the UGC Careless Journal, and certain other more criteria that we have to fulfill in case we are publishing in articles in a journal. So all the areas are completely, both the areas in fact are completely different. That how do I actually publish my article in a journal, and how do I basically publish articles in cases I want my article to be published in a newspaper. So the research is completely different. The background research is completely different.
Now from research, let's shift to internship. Internship curriculum in Indian universities does not recognize internships on classroom teaching, whereas internships under advocates, corporates, and authors are given prime importance. Even if quality researchers are being produced each year, freshers who aspire to be in the field of academics have no hands-on experience in classroom management. What is your opinion on this?
Okay, so this is a very new concept that you are asking me about today, and something which I haven't come across much, but I can maybe supplement my answers with certain examples. Now, internship on the classroom is of course a very very good idea and a very good concept that I have come to know. The teaching in professional courses is not only about the acumen to teach only. Now, suppose, for example, in a criminal law teaching, teaching a criminal law paper, if a practical scenario is not known, like suppose how a case is handled by the police and how it reaches to the court, is something which is very important for the faculty, for the teacher to know that the practical scenario in this particular situation. Now, an in-depth understanding will not come itself until unless the teacher has an idea, or the teacher is able to relate what happens practically in the class. So what happens is, that is the reason that we first talk about that internship under the advocates is a must for a law student, because till the point if the teacher does not have any practical experience, and if the teacher is not able to if the teacher is not able to explain the practical scenario in the class, that gap, to fulfill that particular gap, we have curriculums where we talk about it. Please, students, you go and intern under an advocate so that you come to know about the practical scenario in a much more better way. Now, when it comes to classroom internship, it's of course an hands-on experience is always good. It's a good suggestion that we should club with this with the internship curriculum of interning with an advocate, with something which is a classroom internship. but it will this particular concept will depend from university to university. And if when I when you've raised this very important pertinent question, I feel that uh, there are situations where you will see that when once somebody is a research scholar, like when somebody is a doctoral student, there are also opportunities given by the guide that that you should go and teach in the classroom. And this particular practice is more prevalent in the foreign universities than India, if I'm not wrong. But even in India, there are certain universities who give who give opportunities to their doctoral students that please go and take this many classes. And there are also universities who are giving opportunities to the doctoral students that they should be taking up certain classes, certain minimum classes as a part of their as a part of the whole procedure of the doctoral time that they have. They should at least be taking this many classes. So there are not in a very structured way we have classroom internships in India, and that too only for research students I'm talking about, for MPhil students I'm talking about, for doctoral students I'm talking about. But classroom internships to be brought in the courses of LLB is something which has to still see the light of the day.
Due to this pandemic, post lockdown, there has been a shift from classroom teaching to online teaching in schools and universities across India, and not only India, across the world. Do you think online classes and examinations can actually replace classroom teaching and physical examinations in law school?
I'm actually a great supporter of online teaching, to be true. But then legal education is a very professional course. Now, in a professional course, it is difficult that we go completely online, because a complete online professional course or a complete online thing cannot actually substitute the offline teaching in a professional course like legal education. So, as we require many practical trainings, we require many other important skills which can only be imbibed through physical presence. And one of the benefits of something which is going for an online teaching is something which is only about accessibility. Now what has become easier in an online education is that it has become easier for remote area students who can also get access to the online teachings. We see so many webinars being taking place, we see so many online conferences being taking place, we see so many online conferences being taking place, being conducted by the foreign universities also, where students like you and me can also take part, where we can listen to great scholars, legal scholars around the world. So such things have become accessible during, the times of online process that we are into today because of the COVID times. But then the whole point of, the point that I mentioned about it cannot substitute offline teaching is also something which is correct, because as students of law, we need to also have practical trainings. We need to also go through many other situations, many other, skills that we need to acquire, which cannot be acquired in a complete online setup. So even the if you go through the new national education policy of 2020, even that particular policy, which is also promoting online education, undoubtedly. But then why we cannot in as legal professionals or as students of LLB, we cannot substitute every part of legal education as a part of online education, because we will not get the all round benefits. The students will not get the all round benefits, which are all the skills that are required, with something which will not be possible in case of an online in an all in a 100% online education system, at least for the LLB students, I can say.
Thank you, Sukanya Singh, for your wonderful words and your time in this video. Any last suggestions or recommendations to our viewers who aspire to be in the field of academics?
The first point that I would always like to mention is that academics as a field is a very fulfilling career. However much people have so many myths about going into academics, but at least after listening to me, I believe there will be at least some chunk who will feel that okay, it can be something which can be taken up as a career. And I've also interestingly come across students who come up to me and say that, ma'am, I think I want to really become a professor, I want to become a lecturer. And I see that, nowadays, at least, there's a trend towards, coming towards the academic field. Nowadays, there's a trend towards doing LLM. Nowadays, the people, because maybe of the 1 year structure and everything, people nowadays are, very interested in going for a master's. People nowadays are, going very interested in doing a doctorate, and this is indeed a very, very positive step towards the academics field, towards the field of research, I must say. And especially students who believe in research, I really give them emphasis because I believe there's on still today we lack somewhere or the other on the point of research. And we actually need very good researchers, people who students who actually have the quest for knowledge. They can always opt for academics as a career, and I assure that it is not a boring field as it seems to be, or as many people around us say. It is equally an exciting field, as lawyers in their own professional lawyers, or any other professionals in their own respective areas. And we should understand that I must also add today here that as a student, as academicians, or as a student being in a as a student who has done her LLM, it is this field gives you a chance to work with various intellectuals within the country and also abroad. At times, you also get involved with so many research projects, be it in India or be it also abroad. If you grab all the opportunity at the proper time, there is of course ample opportunities, to there's ample opportunities. Just the time, just the you'll have to grab the opportunity is the whole mantra about. And in the end, I would like to invite all those young minds who wants to excel in the field of academics, and that actually there's a promising career that lies ahead of you. Thank you so much for actually giving me this opportunity to speak so much on myself today. And I hope with my words I'll be able to inspire at least few of those who would be actually interested in researching, would be actually interested to to come into the field of academics. And it is not as boring or as bad as it seems to be. That is for sure. That is for sure something which is there's a promising career which actually lies ahead of each one of you. Thank you so much.